Good morning, philosophers. Hope you're well today. Let's continue with 50, 60, 1, 2, 63. LXIII. All right. I am very sorry to hear of your friend Flaccus's death. Still, I would not have you grieve unduly over it. I can scarcely venture to demand that you should not grieve at all, and yet I'm convinced that it is better that way. But who will ever be granted that strength of character unless he be a man already lifted far out of fortune's reach? Even he will feel a twinge of pain when a thing like this happens, but only a twinge. As for us, we can be pardoned for having given way to tears so long as they have not run down in excessive quantities, and we have checked them for ourselves. When one has lost a friend, one's eyes should be neither dry nor streaming. Tears, yes, there should be, but not lamentation. Can you find the rule I'm laying down, a harsh one, when the greatest of Greek poets has restricted to a single day, no more, a person's right to cry? In the passage where he tells us that even Niobe remembered to eat? Would you like to know what lies behind extravagant weeping and wailing? In our tears, we are trying to find means of proving that we feel the loss. We are not being governed by our grief, but parading it. No one ever goes into mourning for the benefit of merely himself. Oh, the miserable folly of it all, that there should be an element of ostentation in grief. Come now, you will be asking, are you saying that I should forget a person who has been a friend? Well, you're not proposing to keep him very long in your memory if his memory is to last just as long as your grief. At any moment, something or other will happen that will turn that long face of yours into a smiling one. I do not see very much time going by before the sense of loss is mitigated and even the keenest sorrowings settle down. Your face will cease to be its present picture of sadness as soon as you take your eyes off yourself. At the moment you are keeping a watch on your grief, but even as you do it is fading away, and the keener it is, the quicker it is in stopping. Let us see to it that the recollection of those we have lost becomes a pleasure to us. Nobody really cares to cast his mind back to something which he is never going to think of without pain. Inevitable as it is that the names of persons who were dear to us and are now lost should cause us a gnawing sort of pain when we think of them. That pain is not without a pleasure of its own. As my teacher Attalus used to say, quote, "In the pleasure we find in the memory of departed friends there is a resemblance to the way in which certain bitter fruits are agreeable, or the very acidity of an exceedingly old wine has its attraction. But after a certain interval, all that pained us is obliterated, and the enjoyment comes to us unalloyed." End quote. If we are to believe him, quote, "Thinking of friends who are alive and well is like feasting on cakes and honey. Recalling those who are gone is pleasant, but not without a touch of sourness. Who would deny, though, that even acid things like this with a harshness in their taste do stimulate the palate?" End quote. Personally, I do not agree with him here. Thinking of departed friends is to me something sweet and mellow, for when I had them with me it was with the feeling that I was going to lose them, and now that I have lost them I keep the feeling that I have them with me still. So, my dear Lucilius, behave in keeping with your usual fair-mindedness, and stop misinterpreting the kindness of fortune. She has given as well as taken away. Let us therefore go all out to make the most of friends, since no one can tell how long we shall have the opportunity. Let us just think how often we leave them behind when we are setting out on some long journey or other, or how often we fail to see them when we are staying in the same area, and we shall realize that we have lost all too much time while they are still alive. Can you stand people who treat their friends with complete neglect and then mourn them to distraction, never caring about anyone unless they have lost him? And the reason they lament them so extravagantly, then, is that they are afraid people may wonder where they did care. They are looking for belated means of demonstrating their devotion. If we have other friends, We are hardly kind or appreciative of them if they count for so very little when it comes to consoling us for the one we have buried. If we have no other friends, we have done ourselves a greater injury than fortune has done us. She has deprived us of a single friend, but we have deprived ourselves of every friend we have failed to make. A person, moreover, who has not been able to care about more than one friend cannot have cared about that one too much. Supposing someone lost this one and only supposing someone lost his one and only shirt in a robbery, would you not think him an utter idiot if he chose to bewail his loss rather than look about him for some means of keeping out the cold and finding something to put over his shoulders? You have buried someone you loved. Now look for someone to love. It is better to make good the loss of a friend than to cry over him. What I am about to go on to say is, I know, a commonplace, but I am not going to omit it merely because everyone has said it. Even a person who has not deliberately put an end to his grief finds an end to it in the passing of time. And merely growing weary of sorrowing is quite shameful as a means of curing sorrow in the case of an enlightened man. I should prefer to see you abandoning grief than it abandoning you. Much as you may wish to, you will not be able to keep it up for very long, so give it up as early as possible. For women, our forefathers fixed the period of mourning at a year with the intention, not that women should continue mourning as long as that, but that they should not go on any longer. For men, no period is prescribed at all, because none would be decent. Yet, out of all the pathetic females you know, of who were only dragged away from the graveside, or even torn from the body itself with the greatest of difficulty, can you show me one whose tears lasted for a whole month? Nothing makes itself unpopular quite so quickly as a person's grief. When it is fresh, it attracts people to its side, finds someone to offer it consolation. But if it is perpetuated, it becomes an object of ridicule, deservedly too, for it is either feigned or foolish. And all this comes to you from me, the very man who wept for Aeneas Serenus, that dearest of friends to me, so unrestrainedly that I must needs be included. Though this is the last thing I should want, among examples of men who have been defeated by grief. Nevertheless, I condemn today the way I behaved then. I realize now that my sorrowing in the way I did was mainly due to the fact that I had never considered the possibility of his dying before me. That he was younger than I was, a good deal younger, was all that ever occurred to me, as if fate paid any regard to seniority. So let us bear it constantly in mind that those we are fond of are just as liable to death as we are ourselves. What I should have said before was, my friend Serenus is younger than I am, but what difference does that make? He should die later than me, but it is quite possible he will die before me. It was just because I did not do so that fortune caught me unprepared with that sudden blow. Now, I bear it in mind not only that all things are liable to death, but that liability is governed by no set of rules. Whatever can happen at any time can happen today. Let us reflect then, my dearest Lucilius, that we ourselves shall not be long in reaching the place we mourn his having reached. Perhaps, too, if only there is truth in the story told by sages, and some welcoming abode awaits us, he whom we suppose to be dead and gone has merely been sent on ahead. Letter 65. I shared yesterday with a bout of illness. It claimed the morning, but it let me have the afternoon, so I started off by doing some reading to see what energy I had. Then, as it proved up to this, I ventured to make further demands on it, or perhaps I should say concessions to it, and did some writing. I was at this with more than my customary concentration, too, with what the difficulty of the subject and my refusal to give in, until some friends of mine put a stop to it, applying force to restrain me as if I were an invalid who was recklessly overdoing things. The pen gave place to talk, which included the following matter of dispute that I shall now state to you. We have appointed you as arbitrator, and you have more of a case on your hands than you think, for the contest is a three-cornered one. Our Stoic philosophers, as you know, maintain that there are two elements in the universe from which all things are derived, namely, cause and matter. Matter lies inert and inactive, a substance with unlimited potential, but destined to remain idle if no one sets it in motion. And it is cause, this meaning the same as reason, which turns matter to whatever end it wishes and fashions it into a variety of different products. There must then be something out of which things come into being, and something else by means of which things come into being. The first is matter, and the second is cause. Now, all art is an imitation of nature. So, apply what I was saying about the universe to man's handiwork. Take a statue. It had the matter to be worked on by the sculptor, and it had the sculptor to give configuration to the matter. Bronze, in other words, in the case of the statue, being the matter and the craftsman the cause. It is the same with all things. They consist of something which comes into being and something else which brings them into being. Stoics believe that there is only one cause, that which brings things into being. Aristotle thinks that the term cause can be used in three different ways. The first cause, he says, is matter. Without it, nothing can be brought into existence. The second is the craftsman, and the third is form, which is impressed on every single piece of work as on a statue. This last is what Aristotle calls the eidos. And, he says, quote, there is a fourth as well, the purpose of the whole work. End quote. Let me explain what this means. The first cause of the statue is the bronze, as it would never have been made unless there had been something out of which it could be cast or molded. The second cause is the sculptor, as the bronze could not have been shaped into the state in which it is without those skilled hands having come to it. The third cause is the form, as our statue could not have been called, quote, the man with the spear, or, quote, the boy tying up his hair, had this not been the guise impressed on it. The fourth cause is the end in view in its making, for had this not existed, the statue would never have been made at all. What is this end? It is what attracted the sculptor, what his goal was in creating it. It may have been money, if when he worked it he was going to sell it, or fame, if the aim of his endeavors was to win a name, or religion, if it was a work for presentation to a temple. This too, then, is a cause of the statue's coming into being. Unless you take the view that things in the absence of which the statue would have never been created should not be included among the causes of the particular creation. To these four causes, Plato adds a fifth in the model, what he himself calls the idea. This being what the sculptor had constantly before his eyes as he executed the intended work. It does not matter whether he has his model without, one to which he can direct his eyes, or within, conceived, and set up by the artist inside his own head. God has within himself models like this of everything in the universe, his mind embracing the designs and calculations for his projects. He is full of these images which Plato calls ideas, eternal, immutable, ever dynamic. Though human beings may perish, humanity in itself, the pattern on which every human being is molded, lasts on, and while human beings go through much and pass away, itself remains quite unaffected. As Plato has it, then, there are five causes: the material, the agent, the form, the model, and the end. And finally, we get the results of all these. In the case of the statue, to use the example we began with, the material is the bronze, the agent is the sculptor, the form is the guise it is given, the model is what the sculptor making it copies, the end is what the maker has in view, and the final result is the statue itself. The universe as well, according to Plato, has all these elements. The maker is God, matter is the material, the form is the general character and layout of the universe as we see it. The model, naturally enough, is the pattern which God adopted for the creation of this stupendous work in all its beauty. The end is what God had in view when he created it. And that, in case you are asking what is the end God has in view, is goodness. That, at any rate, is what Plato says, quote, What was the cause of God's creating the universe? He is good, and whoever is good can never be grudging with anything good. So he made it as good a world as it was in his power to make it. End quote. So I guess he's not all powerful then. Oh, sorry. Now, it is for you as judge to pronounce your verdict and declare whose statement, in your opinion, seems to be not the truest, for that here is as far out of our reach as truth herself, but most like the truth. This assortment of causes which Aristotle and Plato have collected together. You know what? I'm gonna pause there. This is a good stopping point in this book. What am I thinking about today? I'm thinking about that book I read a couple times, and I read it on the Disenthrall channel. I read and critiqued it, More Equal Animals by Dan Larimer. And why am I thinking of that? Because one of the central points in that book is really, really hard to illustrate to the average person, I think. Like to illustrate it practically. I think a lot of people can kind of understand. So let me stop burying the lead. The concept in the book I'm talking about is like what's on the cover, where one small domino can't really knock over a larger domino. But if you get several smaller dominoes, stack them together and knock them over, then they come together. They are more than the sum of their parts, and they're able to move bigger things, to accomplish bigger things than any of them could individually. That makes sense, I guess. Say using a common phrase like more than the sum of their parts is, I guess, something that maybe most people kind of understand as an aphorism, but I'm not sure people really grasp it. I'm not sure they really grok it. And see it and feel it and understand it on a practical level. What do I mean by that? The best example that I've had in my life about it is running companies. You hire people, you bring them together, you unify them around a goal, and you're able to accomplish way more than, of course, you could do on your own, but also way more than all of those people could do separately on their own. When you bring people together, you get more output than you have input. There's a power in human interaction and working together. That's kind of what we're talking about, what I'm thinking about. So what reminded me of this and gave me maybe a better practical example, because it's probably still difficult for a lot of people to really get a feel or an understanding of what I'm talking about. Just as a practical, fun example, there was a guy on TikTok. What was his name? Nathan Evans. And you guys can look up this video, like go to YouTube and search Nathan Evans Wellerman, Wellerman. And you can find the video on his YouTube channel, Nathan Evans Wellerman Sea Shanty. It's a sea shanty. And it's a really good song. It's a guy just singing a song. He sung it on TikTok, whatever. Okay, it's a great song. I'm into old songs and old style music. So like I like me some sea shanties or whatever. But that wasn't what did it. What did it was then all these people over the course of months on TikTok recorded themselves adding various parts to the song, singing it in their voice or in a different key that they were good at, or adding their instrument to it. And then other people brought all those people together and made compilations, like a mashup or a sort of supercut. And you can, after you watch the original video, go and watch, search on YouTube for Nathan Evans Wellerman Family Tree. And you should find the video I'm talking about, where a guy took all these TikTok people and brought it all together into a single song. And you can feel, I think everyone seeing this transition can feel tangibly almost the greater than the sum of the parts that you get when you bring people together and put them working together behind a common goal. And then I guess the last thing I'll say, as liberty lovers, especially as anarchists, it is difficult to as individualists, we spend so much time running from and fighting against the involuntary collectives that we are forced into, the state, the local government, the federal government, all of these involuntary structures of control over our lives that violate our consent. We spend so much time running from those that I think we lose sight of the very real thing that when people do come together voluntarily around common goals, we become together, working together as individuals, we all together become so much more powerful than any of us individually. It's been really cool to see people come together, like around the Disenthrall platform, around the, our Discord and Matrix server. We've got a really cool group of people going. It's so cool once a year to see a bunch of people come together to do the charity work that we do. We're able to accomplish so much more than any one of us could do separately by coming together in those ways and unifying as individuals around shared goals. So I guess what I'm thinking about today is let's be careful to not lose the baby when we're getting rid of the coercive bathwater that is the state. That's what I'm thinking about today. All right, guys. Have a good day.